eludes a lot of Kenyans. Kindly clarify it for us.
Thank you very much. The minorities and the marginalized communities in Kenya are known to be here, but everybody has been running away. So I'm adding an office appointed by the president, an office that deals with affairs actually, of the minority and the marginalized. And I want to rephrase it as we have minority who are marginalized, or the marginalized minorities. Mm-hmm. We have people who are smaller in number, and their economic power also is below.
You're talking about ethnic communities?
Yes, ethnic communities, no groups, because if I open it to groups, then it will be other issues. The ethnic minorities all across Kenya, we have, they are spread almost to all counties, but the bigger pockets are found in more than 30 counties. Their population runs to almost 4 million, 5 million Kenyans, because we are still mapping them out. These are the people that they are marginalized, as said, and they are minority. They are smaller in number. They cannot get a representative, or they cannot be in the governance. So they need some sort of affirmative action. Article 56 of the Constitution mandates the government to identify such communities, the ethnic communities, and come up with an affirmative action that will bring them on par with the other
Examples of such communities?
We have the Pemba, we have the El Chamus, we have the Agiek. We have 59 communities in this country. Some are stateless, like you saw the story of the Pemba, the story of the Shona, story of the Nubis, who are in this country. They have been here pre-independence. They have not been allowed to be in the list of Kenyans. So all these people, first, we want to identify them, recognize them, protect their rights, and bring them into the government activities, give them documentation, because you cannot do anything in this country if you don't have identification documents.
And just to clarify, because you talked about marginalized minorities, are we saying that there are minorities that are not necessarily marginalized? And if at all you could draw a connection between marginalization and the minorities, what exactly is it?
Yeah, that's okay. That is an issue that we are working on. Today we have minorities, because when we say minorities, we are talking about smaller numbers. We have Kenyans who are Indians. They have a smaller number in Kenya in the total population, but they are not marginalized. And marginalization means they are at least somehow they can feed themselves, take their kids to school, they have land, and they don't really need any affirmative action apart from the leadership maybe and governance part. Then we have the minorities who are living in the poor state, those who have not been recognized. Those are smaller in some counties that they cannot even elect a representative, even an MCA from the area. So those are the ones we call marginalized. They live in those marginal areas, some of them. Most of these minorities are living in the border of Kenya and the other countries, like the Dasnach, the Pare. Just because a bigger population of that tribe lives on the other side of the country, they are not recognized, those living in our side. So they are not recognized either in Tanzania or in Ethiopia. And they are recognized in Ethiopia, in Tanzania, but not those living in Kenya are not recognized in this other side. So we want to really take census of them, know who are those who are the real Kenyans. Then they're identified on this side as a tribe and given their recognition and their culture protected.
Okay, and we've seen, because you mentioned the Shona and such like groupings, where probably some of the interventions that the government has come up with is recognizing these groupings as Kenyans and giving them national identity cards. This past week, or I think towards the end of last week, we saw the dissolution of vetting committees for the issuance of ID cards. And I don't know if this is this one of the interventions that the government is working on?
Yes, this is the first intervention that the government is working on, because vetting affected mostly these minorities, because you're vetted in your own country to be given an identity card, and it costs a lot of people. You find a 48, a 45-year-old Kenyan without documentation just because he or she never passed the so-called vetting. And now that is the first move, and that's an achievement of this office, that the president now has decided that the stories about vetting Kenyans to get a Kenyan identification are put aside. Kenyan is a Kenyan. So long as your village elder can identify you, your neighbors know you, then you're allowed to have the documentation and be registered as a Kenyan and participate in the Kenyan activities.
And away from the national identification documents, what else, what other measures is the government putting in place?
The affirmative action, because some of these people, communities don't have even schools near them. So grading them the same like the others will really continue disadvantaging them. So we have affirmative action on education, affirmative action on employment. Today, as we speak, in the Kenyan National Employment Portal, we have only 56 communities. But the Kenyan Bureau of Statistics enlists up to 120 communities in Kenya. So the others are out. If you are tribe A and you're not in the employment portal, then you cannot be employed. So we need also to elevate and make sure that they are also employed like any other Kenyan. There is a community called Munyoyaya that had even no one in the employment of this country. But recently, because of these interventions, during the KWS employment, 3 or 4 of them were taken. So those are the interventions, bringing everybody on board and making sure that we all develop and we all build the economy of this country. Because if you leave almost half of Kenyans out of building the economy of this country, then we are dragging our country back.
Okay. Josphat Lowoi, Director, Minorities and Marginalized Affairs Unit at the Executive Office of the President. Thank you so much for your time at TV47, helping us look at the headlines and clarifying on matters minorities